and I start to smell some smoke. And there's a difference between vague smoke that's just been filling the air for a month and fresh smoke. And if you live in an area with wildfires, you know the difference. Hey everybody, my name is Garrett. Welcome to Fireside Stories. I'm excited to tell you about an experience I had last summer on the beloved Owyhee River. We're out there at the end of July. This is a trip we'd been working towards all summer. My wife Mandy and I had just had our first child, Eleanor, and it was the longest I was going to be away from home since she was born, 3 months before. And so we're working up to this big week-long trip all summer. And we finally get out there. We're at Rome, Oregon, to put in for the lower Owyhee. And the lower Owyhee is a magical place. It's one of the most remote wilderness rivers in the lower 48. And it is 48 miles of supreme beauty, solitude, challenge, white water, you name it, it's got it. Except for trees. There's not a lot of trees, but that's all right. So the group rolls up. We're excited. We, do our thing at the put in that night, go to sleep. And then the next morning we're getting ready to go and we do the instruction and we're finally getting in the boats and we're off. And my big adventure of the summer had started. I was one of the guides, of course. And so we're going into this area of the wilderness where, no cell reception for 7 days, right? And so, before we put on the water, I had sneaky sent a text to my wife saying, love you, talking to you a week, that sort of thing, final goodbyes. And then we get to our first camp, 8 miles in. The first camp was called 8 Mile. Shocker, real creative name there. And we're at camp that night. We have a pretty good time. Made good time throughout the day. Group's doing pretty well. And then I go to sleep that night. And this kind of scary but semi-normal event happens called dry lightning. And anyone who lives in the western US knows, and maybe the eastern US too, that dry lightning is kind of bad news because what it can do, of course, is start fires. And when there's no rain and a fire starts, the fire is going to win every time. And so I'm sitting in bed and I kind of close my eyes and then wham! A flash of light. And I'm like, oh no, this is not good. Because what had been happening all summer last year was wildfires. Since early July, in Idaho, we had smoky air since the beginning of July. Usually that historically doesn't happen until mid to late August, maybe early August on a bad year. But last year, fires were just everywhere in Idaho. It was a horrible year. There were multiple days where I got out to my car and there was ash on my car last year. So it was a really bad fire year. And so we knew this going into the trip. I actually got an email before the trip saying, hey, have you heard, this is from someone that lives in the area. They asked me if I had heard that the takeout called Birch Creek Ranch, if I knew that it was on fire. And so I have this mental picture of us paddling into Birch Creek and it's all aflame and we're like, well, this is not a very good takeout anymore. But thankfully it was just rumor. Birch Creek was fine. We were all clear. But yeah, when I was in my sleeping bag that night, I just opened my eyes and watched a little bit longer and flashes of light on the horizon. And I'm like, oh man, this is not ideal with our fire conditions. So eventually go to sleep. Thankfully it didn't rain. And wake up the next morning. We have a pretty good day on the water. And then we get to our second camp, Hackberry Beach. Hackberry are either upper or lower, I can't remember which. But there's this big hackberry tree. It's a beautiful camp. Anyone who's been there knows that it's just a wonderful place. It's got this big hackberry that you can like walk underneath, and the boughs of the tree kind of come down, and it like just hugs you. It's where we put the kitchen. There's a lot of shade. It should be hard to find out there. So it's great. We have a lovely evening, wrap up conversation, and I start to smell some smoke. And there's a difference between vague smoke that's just been filling the air for a month and fresh smoke. And if you live in an area with wildfires, you know the difference. Fresh smoke has more of a distinct scent to it. It's kind of like if you had like burned something on the stove, and then what you smell in that moment versus after you put that fire out, and then later in the the day you come back into the house and there's like that vague smell of smoke. It's kind of like that. You can tell when something's burning in the moment. And it smelled to me like there was something burning in the near area in that moment. Speaking of smoke, I'm actually gonna close this and let our wood stove do the work. So I get worried to the point where I go up on a ridge nearby from our camp, and I'm looking around trying to see like, is there a plume of smoke somewhere? And I didn't see one. So that was sort of comforting, but not really. And then we go to sleep, sun goes down, of course, gets dark, and I could smell it to the point where I was looking on the canyon rim for like a red glow of from fire up on the ridge. No red glows, so that was pretty nice. Next morning, I slept pretty well, but I also prayed that the Lord would manage the fires for us, and and so we get to the next morning, we're packing up camp, and I happened to check our satellite phone, which we had brought. I had texted some updates on the trip to someone that was here in Horseshoe Bend at the Idaho Adventure Base. And so I checked the sat phone that next morning before we left camp, and I got a text from him. His name's Kelly. And the text reads, update, the sheriff's office in that county had issued a mandatory evacuation for our entire group. There's 16 of us. And all of a sudden, our trip went from, okay, we're on day 3 of day 7 on the river. We haven't even started, we just finished the first quarter, essentially. And we're just starting the second quarter. And now I'm told that we're all getting off the river today in a matter of hours. The fundamental shift of expectations is massive. This is equal to expecting to be in school till June, and then one day at the end of February, you're told your school year's over. Maybe even at the end of November, being told that. So this is huge. And a lot of emotions in that moment. There's a mixture of surprise and feeling nervous, excited, all these different emotions come up. But I go back to the group and I share this announcement, and the look on their faces was total surprise. And this is that moment is the true experience of adventure, when something happens that you did not see coming. And then you have a choice about how you're going to react to it. How do you respond in that moment? And so we talked about it as a group, decided to make the most of our day. We had a ton of great whitewater to paddle that day on those kayaks. And then it was let's soak up every minute, because you don't know how long it's going to last. But on that day we did know it wasn't going to last that much longer. And so we take off, and we had a rendezvous point downstream, one of the few access points on that river. There are roads that go out to the Owyhee River Canyon. Long stretches of dirt roads to get out there, very remote, not an easy road to get down. And so there was a place called Ryegrass Hot Springs and that's where we were going to meet him. These are places we have scouted ahead of time, and we know we can get vehicles to these spots, or at least very close. So we have a great day on the water. We enjoy ourselves as much as we can. We went through the classic Artillery, one of the best rapids on the river. And eventually we get to Ryegrass, make the most of our time there. And then we, like me and another staff member, we hike up to, there's a kind of a 4x4 like off-road vehicle trail road thing that goes up to the top of the rim of the canyon. So me and a staff member like go up that. It's a little bit gentler slope. We run up. Eventually we get cell reception. We're able to make a call to Kelly. He's coming out with a couple of sheriffs. We see their vehicles coming down, and we made a plan with them, worked it out. Essentially, we were in the end going to bring the group up with as much gear as they could carry. Anything we couldn't take, we were just going to leave there. Us staff were going to come back the next day and extract it. So we do the best we can. Grab a quick bite to eat. Pita pizza were on the menu, and that's a great meal. If you've never had pita pizzas, I encourage you to try them. So we get some energy and some carbs, and then we hike out. It's about a half a mile, and it was really comical in that moment because we looked back and we saw a line of hikers with paddles and helmets on, and it was like, are you lost? Like, why are you gonna paddle up the trail? It was pretty comical. And eventually we get to the top, and we load up in the vehicles. Kind of had to squish in a little bit to get everybody out in one go, but eventually we're able to do it. I'm in, there's 2 vehicles from the sheriffs, 1 vehicle from Youth Dynamics. So I get in the Youth Dynamics truck, we're driving, and eventually we get to this grade. And this grade is like uphill for sure, but the closer you got to it, the steeper you realized it was. And it was like kind of sketchy to the point where Kelly was driving and he was like, you guys should get out. Like, I don't know how this is gonna go. And on the side is like, just a really steep hill, not a cliff, but pretty close. A lot of loose rock on this thing, and it's a hairpin turn. You get to the top and like, you can't see where it goes because it turns so sharply to the left. So we're like, good luck, Kelly. And we're kind of running behind trying to stay close-ish to the truck. But he takes off. He gets to the top, and there was this other guide with us. His name's Greg Kazin, and he sometimes when you're in a vehicle and there's a steep slope on one side, you try to counterbalance the vehicle by everybody sitting on that side, or like even you get out and stand on the bed of the truck. This one had a cage, so there's something to hang on to. And so Greg was standing on the edge of the bed of the truck with his hands up on the cage, and the smile on his face, he was basically riding the roller coaster at Disney World. He was having a great time. And Kelly gets to the top of this thing, he just like keeps going, the tires are kind of spinning out. This piece of rock like juts out into the road at one point. And it's probably like this far off the ground. And Kelly just had to gun it. And the truck like bounces over this thing, and he made it. And I was one of those things that you go up it and you're like, never gonna do that again. That was a one-time trip. So anyways, we got out. We had a good debrief with the group talking about like, this is not what we expected. This is not the trip we planned for, but God still has something in this for you. And taking time as a group and just individuals to process like, this was a total surprise. This was completely unexpected. And God is in those moments. God is in the unexpected and the surprises. And so for each person to process them, like, God, what are you teaching me in this? This is not a failure. This isn't a ruined trip. This was an adventure. And what is God showing me in that? Was really powerful, really meaningful to hear the stories that night. Next day, we sent him off after breakfast. We go down to get the gear. Went super smooth. That was a huge blessing. The Lord totally provided. We met some people that lived in the area. They were willing to let us pass through their private land. They gave us a code to get through this gate that gave us a bypass past that really steep grades, so we didn't have to hike gear up it. And yeah, the Lord protected us. We were able to get everybody out, and we were coming out. This actually happened, I think, the day before, but as we were driving, we came across a Bureau of Land Management truck. And this guy, kind of slows down, and like, he's from the government agency, maybe he wants to talk to us. So we slowed down, we chatted up a little bit, and we finished our conversation, and he's like, "You guys want some pizza?" And we're like, "What? We're in the middle of nowhere, and you're like in a BLM truck, like, and you just have a bunch of pizza?" And we're like, "Yeah, of course, we'd love some pizza." And he's like, "Sweet. We ordered a bunch last night for the guys, and we had a bunch left over." So he like reaches in the back of his truck, gives us like 4 boxes of Domino's pizza in the middle of the wilderness. It's very possible he was an angel. So anyways, that was my experience on the Owyhee in summer of 2024, and it's definitely one I'll never forget.
Thanks for joining us for Streamside Stories. Click the link to subscribe and join us for more stories and virtual adventures. This isn't the only way we want to adventure together, though. We also want to invite you to come join us for an adventure and create some stories of your own. To do so, head to www.yd.org to connect with us and our bases to start your journey today. Thanks.